Alright, welcome back. In this fine video I will do two things. First and foremost, I will show how I touch up this older paint job. So I want to bring him up to the standard I have nowadays. So it's good enough, the standard here you see before you. Here's the entire unit before I repainted them. But yeah, it looks good enough, but I want to bring it up to a better standard. So there you see I want to add some color, I want to add some shade there. I want to make him a bit more interesting, make him fit with the rest of my army. So you see here I have a Chaos Chosen model I painted not long ago. So I want to make the knights look more like the Chosen. So you see there with some burgundy and some purple and some black and gold, and to make it more thematic. So I will also endeavor to respond why I, of all people, why I like Chaos. Why do I have a Warriors of Chaos army, or Slaves to Darkness as they are known in Age of Sigmar. So I'm gonna touch up on the knight here, and I will talk more about these matters. So first and foremost, we start with the burgundy. So opening up with a dark pink here, and I'm doing this to match the color scheme on the Chosen, and also to give some more interest to the knight here, so it's not only silver, because that was the sort of the overall style of him before I redid the paint job, or I didn't redo it, but I touched up on the paint job. So I'm gonna let the footage here show while I discuss why I like Chaos. After all, maybe you find it a bit counterintuitive that I, of all people, should like Chaos when I usually label political opponents and such as the forces of chaos. It is quite useful to talk about politics in those terms, actually, but when it comes to Warhammer Fantasy, I have always been attracted to the aesthetic of chaos, the aesthetic of it. It's sort of like a heavy metal, like a 80s or 90s heavy metal aesthetic. And I suppose that some of you know, if you have been with me for a little while, a few years, or many years even, you know that I'm an enjoyer of metal. I even have the playlist on Spotify titled The Golden One Pre-Workout of Metal and Glory, where I have accumulated many cool songs over many years. So that is one reason. There's also the aesthetic of being an elite warband. So you have fewer troops, but better troops. There's something appealing with that. Sort of think like the Spartans or any other elite unit, and they're fighting against a horde. So the aesthetic of an elite unit always appealed to me when it comes to chaos, and to a certain extent elves, but that's a different story. Now we're talking about my highly heretical liking of chaos. And speaking of heretical likings, I will admit that I've always been an enjoyer of Slanesh, not the deeper considerations when we're talking about depravity and such. I'm very much against degeneracy, as you all know, but the aesthetic. So this is very much an aesthetic first video. You can sort of gauge that just by how many times I've used the term aesthetic now. So anyway, the aesthetic of Slanesh with sort of regal purple colors always looked really cool in my humble opinion. So that was why I was always drawn to that sort of style also of painting. It looks good, it's a cool color, I like purple. So a simple but valid reason to like a particular army in Warhammer. Now, all that being said, when we're talking about the lore, regardless if we're talking about fantasy, so be it Age of Sigmar or the Old World or Warhammer 40,000, Horus Heresy, I'm of course on the side. I root for the good guys, so the Imperium or the factions of good and order in the fantasy setting. There is also, if we're talking about the Warhammer Old World setting, there is the connection with the North for chaos, which I of course like. Now checking in on the paint job, we can see that he is looking better. So added some highlights, added some color, adding some interest. So there you can see on the banner as well, I added some more lighter purple highlights, and you can also see here that I have added a bit brighter off-white to the horns. Before they looked quite yellow, so making them pop more on the tabletop. So when you add highlights and you brighten a model up, even though it's supposed to be a dark model, so Chaos aesthetically is supposed to be dark, but if you add some highlights, it will add sort of a punch to the model, making it pop more on the tabletop, and that is much more stimulating for the eye to look at. Now, at this stage, I was quite happy with how the knights looked, but I decided to darken the armor a bit to increase the contrast between the more colorful parts and the metal, and also the metal being a bit darker, it would match better with the rest of the army, so like the chosen I showed earlier in the video. So here I'm simply adding some dark shade, so a black wash to the metal to make it a bit more grim dark. And also you want, when it comes to Chaos, it's quite interesting, it's quite fun to paint, because you do want to have them dark, but you still want some color to add interest to it. So it becomes a quite interesting and fun army to paint, actually. So anyway, I have had the pleasure, speaking of the tabletop, I've had the pleasure of playing 3 games of Age of Sigmar now. Shout out to Robin if you're watching this. So I'm super impressed. I didn't quite know what to expect at first, but having played a bit, I will say I'm hooked, actually. I look forward to the next game. Extremely good for reducing my chronically high cortisol levels, so very nice to get the mind thinking about, you know, tactics and armor lists and everything like that. It is quite different to Warhammer the Old World, so I don't view them as, you know, competitors to each other. I view them as 2 completely different games, and I do also look forward to getting into Warhammer the Old World later in the year. I need to paint some more Bretonnian knights to get my army in order, but I still have that as a plan at least. But yeah, Age of Sigmar, super fun. I'm not into the lore, I haven't read any book, and I'm not a fan of the lore, and last time I checked, they will redo the setting of Age of Sigmar, so I will maybe give it a go, read some short story or something later on. We will see. I'm keeping an eye out for a new setting, and yeah, I'm open-minded there as well. I just hope they won't add a bunch of woke stuff in the lore. That would be greatly disappointing, but hopefully we have reached peak woke, and stuff like that is fast going out of style. So anyway, back to the paint job, starting to look quite good. So again, adding some additional depth to the model by increasing the shades, adding some separation between the different elements, especially there on the armor, so you get a bigger contrast between the recesses and the highlights. So quite pleasing to the eye when you get that separation. You can also do such a thing as blacklining, which means that you paint a thin black line between different elements, so it's easier for the eye to read it as you know what it is, so different parts of the model. So yeah, good stuff, good stuff. There we have the finished model. Quite nice indeed, if I may be so bold as to say so myself. I'm quite happy. This is a standard I am happy to present. So now I have a Chaos Knight champion. So I have converted him ever so slightly by making the horse prance a bit. So to make it a bit more dramatic and to make it visible that he is indeed the champion of the unit, and in game terms he is a bit better than the rest of the models. He has an extra attack. So here we see another one of the knights, so same effect there. The highlights are a bit brighter, the shades are a bit darker, making the effect a bit more dramatic. So yeah, quite happy with that model as well. And then we have here the standard bearer, added some more highlights of purple to the banner, added some more whites to the horns as well, and then the same sort of, a bit darker and a bit lighter at the same time for increased contrast. And there we have the musician, so I focused on the horns there on the shield and also on the head. So yeah, also quite pleased with the result. Quite good, if I may be so bold. So yeah, that is the paint job. Hopefully this video was cozy to listen to or to watch. Perhaps you learned something, I don't know. Do let me know in the comment section, and also do let me know if you want me to make any special type of video. I'm all ears. You know, I don't have many subscribers here, but I appreciate everyone who is subscribed, so I read all of the comments. Just let me know what you want, and I will see you in the next video, either here or on the main channel or somewhere else. So there are also some finishing shots showing my chosen. These are super good in the game, by the way. So, all that being said, thank you for watching and thank you for your support. XOXO, boom!